You hear people talk about overcoming an addiction, and you think it's about regaining control, about becoming who you were before everything fell apart. Let me tell you something no one is going to explain to you clearly. You're not going back. That person you were no longer exists. They died somewhere along the way, and what's left are fragments that no longer fit together. Addiction is not a temporary detour you return from. It's a complete demolition of everything you thought you were. And when the dust settles, when the substance is gone and the noise fades, what you find is not your old self waiting for you with open arms. It's a brutal void staring straight at you and asking who the hell you are now. That's the part no one prepares you for, because the world loves stories of redemption where the hero is reborn triumphant. But reality is far harsher. Rebirth first requires death, and that death is so real it strips away everything that once defined you. When the substance disappears, it doesn't leave alone. It takes with it the identity you built around it, the excuses that allowed you to keep going, the lies you told yourself to justify the unjustifiable. You're left naked in front of a mirror reflecting something unrecognizable, someone you no longer are but don't yet know how to become. And here's what no one wants to admit. That void is not temporary. It's not something you fill with good habits and positive thinking. That void is permanent. It's the absence of everything you used to avoid feeling, to avoid thinking, to avoid fully existing. Addiction wasn't just the consumption, it was the armor that allowed you not to face questions that terrified you. Who am I without this? What do I do with this freedom that crushes me? How do I live without the crutches that held me up? Kierkegaard wrote that anxiety is the dizziness of freedom, and he was right. When you stop running, when you stand face to face with your own existence, without chemical shortcuts, you feel that dizziness. It's the price of being conscious, and it's so high that most people prefer to stay asleep. Society sells you the idea that overcoming an addiction is a heroic act, a victory worthy of applause. But no one tells you that the price of that victory is becoming someone who no longer fits anywhere. Because when you walk through the fire and come out the other side, you can no longer tolerate the superficial way the rest of the world lives. You watch people talk about problems that seem insignificant, complain about inconveniences that are nothing compared to what you faced, and you feel a disconnect so deep, you wonder if you'll ever be able to relate normally again. The answer is no, you can't. Because you've seen the depths of human suffering, you've stood on the edge of the abyss and felt everything your collapse. And that experience changes you in ways that can't be undone. You can no longer pretend that the things that matter to others matter to you. You can't participate in empty conversations without feeling like you're betraying something larger within yourself. And that makes you uncomfortable, someone people prefer to avoid because your mere presence reminds them that they too are running from something. Here's the brutal paradox. Healing makes you stronger, but also lonelier. Because the strength you gain is not the kind the world applauds. It's not visible success or measurable achievements. It's a quiet, dark strength, forged in suffering and in the acceptance of truths most people don't want to see. It's the ability to look at your own shadow without flinching, to recognize every lie you've told yourself, every excuse you've used, every person you've hurt, every version of yourself you've destroyed along the way. And when you have that ability, when you can hold your own darkness in your gaze, you can no longer lie to yourself. But you also can't lie to others, and that's a problem. Because the social world runs on polite lies, well-constructed facades, collective self-deceptions that no one questions. And you, who can no longer pretend, become a threat. Your honesty makes people uncomfortable. Your clarity irritates them. Your lack of filters scares them. Not because you're aggressive, but because you're real in a world that prefers illusion. Nietzsche said that whoever has a why to live can endure almost any how. But what they don't tell you is that finding that why after addiction is like searching for light in a tunnel with no end. Because addiction robs you of meaning, rips it out by the roots. And when you try to rebuild it, you realize that easy answers no longer work. You can't go back to believing in simple narratives, in promises of constant happiness, in the idea that if you do things right, everything will turn out right. You already know life doesn't work that way. You've seen how everything can collapse in an instant, how control is an illusion, how suffering needs no reason to appear. And with that knowledge, you have to build meaning that isn't based on naive hope, but on accepting that existence is hard, unfair, and often absurd. That's the only way forward. Accepting that there are no guarantees, no promised rewards, that the only meaning that exists is the one you choose to create, despite everything. The silence that appears when the substance is gone is deafening. It's not the peaceful silence of inner calm. It's the brutal silence of confrontation. It's the space where there used to be noise, escape, anything but you. And now you're there, face to face with yourself, without distractions, without excuses, without anything to protect you from the questions you've avoided for years. What did I do with my life? Who did I hurt? What did I lose? Who could I have been if I hadn't fallen? And the answers to those questions are painful because they mean recognizing that you wasted time, destroyed relationships, let opportunities pass, and were your own worst enemy. But here's the trick that separates those who truly heal from those who simply stop using. The difference lies in accepting those answers without drowning in them. It's not about justifying. It's not about minimizing. It's about looking at the devastation you caused and saying, yes, this is what I did, and now I live with it. That acceptance is not redemption, not instant forgiveness. It's simply the decision to carry the consequences without breaking under their weight. People will tell you you're brave for getting out of addiction, but bravery isn't in getting out, it's in staying out. Because every day without the substance is a day you have to consciously choose not to go back. And that choice is exhausting. It's not dramatic, it's not epic, it's silent and repetitive. It's waking up every morning and deciding that today you won't run either, that today you'll face life as it is, with its boredom, its monotony, its apparent lack of meaning. And that's harder than any spectacular battle because there are no witnesses, no applause, no recognition. It's an internal war no one sees, and most of the time, you don't even acknowledge your own resistance. You simply keep going, day after day, choosing clarity over fog, reality over illusion, conscious pain over numbness. And at some point you realize that repetition is your strength. You're not strong because you defeated something once. You're strong because you keep choosing every day, without fanfare, without immediate rewards, simply because it's the only option that allows you to be real. The tolerance for pain you develop is inhuman. Because you've gone through something most people can't even imagine. You've hit bottom in ways that break people, and you've found a way to crawl back out. That teaches you something no book can teach. That pain doesn't kill you, that you can endure far more than you ever thought possible, that the limit of your resilience is much farther away than you imagined. And that lesson is both a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because it makes you invincible in certain ways. Nothing that comes afterward will break you in the same way. But it's a curse because it disconnects you from normal human experience. When someone complains about something that seems trivial to you, you have to bite your tongue to avoid saying what you really think. When someone falls apart over something you've survived 1,000 times, you have to fake empathy you no longer feel naturally. It's not that you've become insensitive. It's that your scale of suffering is calibrated differently, and that isolates you. Because real empathy is born from shared experiences, and your experiences are so far outside the norm that you no longer share that common ground with most people. Sartre wrote that we are condemned to be free, and that phrase has never made more sense than when you come out of an addiction. Because addiction was, at its core, a way of renouncing freedom. It was handing control over to something external, abdicating responsibility, creating a narrative where you weren't the villain, just the victim of a substance stronger than you. But when that substance disappears, there's no one left to blame. Freedom returns in full force, and with it, total responsibility for every decision you make. You can no longer say the substance controls you, that you have no choice, that you're trapped. You're free, brutally free. And that means every step you take is yours. Every mistake is yours. Every failure is yours. There are no excuses, no shortcuts, no way to escape the fact that you are the only one responsible for what you do with your life from now on. And that freedom weighs more than any chain, because it's easier to live as a slave than as the owner of your destiny. A slave can blame the master. The free person can only blame themselves. And here comes the truth no one wants to hear. Healing is not a reward. It's not the prize at the end of the road, not the light at the end of the tunnel, not the eternal happiness you were promised. Healing is an exchange, and what you give up is enormous. You lose the comfortable identity, the version of yourself that justified everything with addiction. You lose illusions, those pretty lies you told yourself about who you were and who you could be. You lose victimhood, the narrative where you were always suffering the consequences of external forces. You lose the comfort of self-deception, that ability not to see what you didn't want to see. And in return, what do you gain? Clarity. You see the world as it is, without filters, without distortions, without the fog the substance created. You see people as they are, with their masks and fears, their lies and escapes. You see yourself as you are, with your scars and shadows, your history and your decisions. And that clarity is brutal because you can't return to ignorance. You can't unlearn what you've learned. You can't close your eyes to what you've seen. You gain authenticity. You can no longer pretend, no longer wear masks that aren't yours, no longer play roles that feel false. You are who you are, without embellishment, without apologies, without trying to please those who shouldn't be pleased. And that authenticity makes you free, but also alone. Because most people don't want authenticity, they want comfort. They want you to tell them what they expect to hear, to behave according to social norms, not to confront them with uncomfortable truths. And you can no longer do that, not because you're rebellious, but because you literally can't. You've lost the ability to lie convincingly, even to yourself. And that makes you dangerous to the social order. Because if you can live without lies, then others can too, and that challenges the entire system of self-deception society is built on. You gain freedom, but not the romantic freedom sold in movies, not the freedom to do whatever you want without consequences. You gain hard freedom, the freedom to exist without pretending, to face each day knowing you're responsible for every minute, every choice, every word. It's the freedom to say no when everyone expects you to say yes, to walk alone when everyone walks together, to build your path without maps or guarantees. And that freedom doesn't promise happiness. It doesn't promise easy days or peaceful nights. It promises something far more valuable and far more difficult: the ability to look yourself in the mirror and recognize who you see, to know that the person there is real, not hiding anything, not running from anything, simply being. And that, in a world where almost everyone is playing a role, is revolutionary. The scars you carry don't disappear. They don't turn into symbols of victory or medals of honor. They remain scars, permanent marks of battles that almost destroyed you. But here's the difference. You no longer see them as weakness. You no longer hide them or feel ashamed of them. They're proof that you walked through the fire and survived, that you hit bottom and found a way back up, that you broke into pieces and learned how to exist fragmented without collapsing. Each scar is a reminder that pain didn't kill you, that you're capable of enduring more than you thought, that the indestructible part of you is far greater than the part that broke. And when you understand that, when you integrate your scars as part of your identity, instead of trying to erase them, something changes. You stop chasing perfection, stop trying to be an idealized version of yourself, and simply are, with your cracks, your shadows, your complete history. The perception you develop is unsettling, because you've seen the depths of yourself, unraveled every lie you told yourself, dismantled every defense mechanism, and that teaches you to see those same patterns in others. You recognize self-deception from miles away, see excuses before they're fully formed, detect emotional escapes with frightening precision. And that doesn't make you superior. It makes you more aware of others' suffering. But it also makes you less tolerant of lies. When someone tells you they can't change, you know it's a lie because you changed when it seemed impossible. When someone plays the victim without taking responsibility, you see it clearly because you spent years doing exactly that. And here's the problem. That perception turns you into an uncomfortable mirror. People don't want to see themselves reflected in your clarity, don't want you to point out what they're avoiding, don't want to be reminded that they too have the power to change. So they push you away, label you as harsh, insensitive, too honest. And maybe they're right. Maybe you are all of that. But you're also real, and in a world full of illusions, that's worth more than popularity. The world wants you to celebrate your recovery, to talk about it as an inspiring triumph, to turn it into a motivational story for others. But you know that's not how it is. It's not a story with a happy ending. It's a permanent transformation that never really ends. Every day is part of the process, every decision part of the construction, every moment of clarity part of the price you keep paying. There's no finish line, no moment when you can say, "That's it, I've made it, I'm free." Freedom is something you choose every day, not something you conquer once and for all. And that truth is exhausting, because it means you can never fully relax, that you always have to stay conscious, that you always have to choose reality over illusion. But it's also liberating, because it means you're not bound to a fixed identity. You're not the recovering addict. You're someone who chooses not to run every day, someone who chooses confrontation over escape, someone who builds meaning in the middle of chaos. Viktor Frankl survived the concentration camps and wrote that everything can be taken from a person except one thing: the last of the human freedoms, the choice of one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. That's what you discover when you go through addiction and come out the other side. They can take away the substance, comfort, illusions, identity, but they can't take away your ability to choose how you respond. That's your irreducible freedom, your last stronghold, the part of you no addiction can completely destroy. And when you find that part, when you realize it's still there despite everything, you begin to rebuild from the foundations. You don't rebuild who you were, you build something new. Someone who has seen the abyss and decided not to stay there. Someone who knows their own darkness and doesn't fear it. Someone who can hold the truth without needing to sweeten it. The honesty you develop is a double-edged sword. It frees you from the chains of self-deception, but it isolates you from those who still live in it. Because most people build their lives on functional lies, beliefs that aren't exactly true, but allow them to keep going. And you, who can no longer hold those lies, become a threat to their balance. It's not that you want to destroy their illusions, you simply can't participate in them anymore. And that creates a distance that's hard to close. You find yourself in conversations where everyone nods along to things you know are false, in situations where everyone pretends something matters when it doesn't, in social dynamics where you're expected to play a role you can no longer perform. And you have two options: pretend to fit in, or be honest and be alone. Most people choose the first. You no longer can. You've paid too high a price for your honesty to sell it back for social acceptance. The loneliness that accompanies healing isn't accidental. It's structural. Because you've changed so deeply that you no longer share the same language with those who haven't gone through something similar. You can explain what you lived, but they can't truly understand it. They can empathize, they can support you, but there's an experiential abyss that words can't bridge. And that's okay. You don't need them to understand. You need them to let you be who you are now, without trying to turn you back into who you were before. Because that return is impossible, and every attempt to force it only reminds you how much you've changed. Loneliness becomes your ally, not your enemy. It's the space where you can be completely honest, where you don't have to translate your experience to make it digestible, where you can exist without apologizing for being different. Epictetus said that it's not things themselves that disturb people, but the judgments they make about them. And that's exactly what changes when you overcome an addiction. Your judgments. You no longer judge pain as something to be avoided at all costs. You judge it as an inevitable part of existence. You no longer judge failure as the end of the world. You judge it as useful information. You no longer judge loneliness as rejection. You judge it as clarity. Your judgments recalibrate based on what you've lived. And that recalibration gives you a perspective most people will never have. You see problems for what they are, not magnified by fear, not minimized by denial. You see them clearly, and that clarity allows you to respond in ways that were previously impossible. You don't react, you act. You don't collapse, you adapt. You don't run, you face things. And all of that not because you're special, but because you've trained in the fire, and now you know you can endure it. The final secret, the one no one tells you because it sounds too harsh, is this. Healing doesn't make you happy. It doesn't turn you into someone who smiles all the time, who's at peace, who has all the answers. It turns you into someone who can live without pretending, who can face reality without anesthesia, who can exist in the world as it is without needing it to be different. And that's not happiness. It's something far deeper and far harder to achieve. Acceptance. Acceptance that life is hard, that suffering is inevitable, that there are no guarantees or fair rewards. Acceptance that you are responsible for every decision, that no one is coming to rescue you, that the meaning you find will be the one you build yourself. Acceptance of your scars, your history, the person you've become through the fire. And that acceptance isn't resignation, it's liberation. Because when you accept that life isn't going to be easy, you stop expecting it to be. And that expectation was what kept you trapped. When you look back and see everything you've been through, everything you've lost, everything you've had to let go of, you realize something fundamental. It was worth it. Not because you're happy now, not because everything is resolved, but because you're real now. You're a whole person, not a shadow running from itself. You're someone who can hold the truth without breaking, who can look at their own darkness without getting lost in it, who can exist in the world without needing to escape from it. And that, in a world full of people constantly running away, is extraordinary. It's not glorious, not epic, not what you were promised, but it's yours, it's real, it's solid. And after living so long in illusion, reality, with all its harshness, feels like a gift. A gift you didn't ask for, didn't expect, that cost you everything you were. But a gift nonetheless. The freedom to be who you truly are, without excuses, without masks, without escapes. That is the only reward that matters, and it's more than most people will ever have.